Hi, it's Vicky from So Fabulous Fabrics. I'm here today to stitch up the wide mouth zipper pouch which has been designed by Hazel A Patterns. My version is going to be slightly different to the one you see on the front of the pattern, as I'm not going to put the pocket in, but I am going to show you how to do the pocket as we go along with making the pouch. So this is what mine will look like. Obviously I'm going to be using different fabrics. This is in some lovely bees and strawberries, but as you can see I haven't got the zipper pouch on the front of mine. The reason I'm doing it like this at the moment is because I'm making some for a up and coming craft fair that will be happening in November, and I just wanted to make them the quickest way possible. So although it doesn't take long to do the zipper pouch, it is another step to put the zipper pocket in. So this is how it is going to look, and there's the inside. So you can see that it opens up really wide. It's a really good project bag, or you could use it as a wash bag if you put some waterproof fabric inside. So that's what I will be making today. So I'll just move that one out of the way. So I have my pattern pieces which I printed off the computer, and I've cut them out, and as you can see they're a little bit rough around the edges because as I say, I have been making some of these, and obviously the pattern pieces are only on paper, but they're absolutely fine. So that's the pattern pieces. And then you've got the instructions, which you can purchase on my website as a pattern. It's a PDF pattern, and you can just download it to your computer, and then you've got it for life. So I've printed this one off. So that's the pattern. The fabrics I'm going to use for the main zipper pouch are these ones here. So I've got these with the sewing bits and pieces on. This is a fabric from Lewis and Irene. I believe it's one of their newest ranges, but unfortunately it's not one that I stock in my shop, so I can't actually remember what it's called. But it's, as you can see, it's got lots of lovely sewing notions on, scissors and pins and wool and sewing thread and all sorts of bits and pieces. And then I've got the lilac spotty for the lining. So that's what I'm going to be using to make my zipper pouch without the pocket on the front. But because this video will be used for the full wide mouth zipper pouch, I'm going to show you how to do the zip up pocket on the front, and these are the fabrics I'm going to use. Now I've got them prepped already. So I've got, this is the bottom half of the front that you can see, hopefully that's in shot, you can see it just there. And then you've got the top bit with the zip sandwiched in between. So I have my piece of lining, which is the same as the front part of the pouch, and mine is a one-way design, so I need to attach the bottom of this piece of fabric to the top of the front panel, so it'd be on top of the zip. So that will sit like that. So hopefully you can see the 3 layers there. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put some clips on it. Now, quite a useful tip, which Hazel does mention, I think, in the pattern, is to actually use some double-sided tape, which you can put down on the fabric and then put the zip on the top. You'd only want a very narrow one because you don't want it to interfere with when you're stitching, but I'm going to clip mine because I've done this quite a lot of times. You need to make sure that your two pieces of fabric are even down the sides, because you don't want one piece wider, well, or sticking out to the side of the other piece. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this on together, and I'm going to cut my ends of the zips off and put some bar tacks as a stopper for the zip. So there is the zip stitched on for the front pocket. I've put some bar tacks on either end of the zip so as the zipper pull wouldn't come off, because with these dress zips it's quite hard to get them back on again. So that's my zip ready. So that part is the front, and then that is going to be the pocket inside. So what you're going to do now is you're going to bring the top of your pocket up to the top of the zip, and you're going to sandwich that between the zip and the top part of the front panel. So again, if it's a one-way fabric, make sure you've got it round the right way. So that will go on the top of there. So I'm going to clip that and then get it stitched together, and then we'll have a look at the finished front part. There we have the front pocket of the zipper pouch finished. So I have attached the top part of the pouch to the zip, and I have top stitched it as well. So you can open that up, and there is the inside of your pocket. And then I've stitched 1/8 of an inch down either side just to secure it all together for when you're stitching the side panels on. So that is how to do the front pocket. I'm now going to move on to the pouch that I'm going to make today without the pocket in it. If you decide that's what you want to do, you want to not have the front pocket, then when you cut out your pieces, you are going to need to cut two pieces that are exactly the same size. So if you use the size piece on the pattern that is for the back, then you just cut one out exactly the same size for the front. Because you're not putting the zip in, that will be absolutely fine. So if you look back at the one with the bees, hopefully you can see this is the stitching line here for the side pieces and on the back. So each of these panels on the front are exactly the same size. Once you've got your pieces cut out of the fabric, you'll then need to put some interfacing on. So I use iron-on interfacing. So this is the lining. So it's exactly the same size piece as the pattern piece, which you're using for the interfacing. So those I've done and iron the interfacing on. And then the front or the main body of the pouch, you've got your two side pieces, which you will have cut out using the main piece, and then the fusible fleece piece is slightly smaller. So you'll see if I flip it over that the fleece is actually just slightly smaller than the fabric piece. On the main front piece, you will find some dots on there which you need to transfer onto your interfacing of the side pieces, which I've already done. And then also you've got notch top and bottom, and I have cut a tiny little bit out of each one on those side pieces, which hopefully you can just about see there. And then your two main your two body pieces, front and back, you're going to be cutting from the directions that are on the pattern, and those are, as I said before, are both the same size. So you'll be then attaching, interfacing, and then ironing on your fusible fleece as well. So then they are all ready to go. The first part of making this pouch is to stitch the front panel and the back panel together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you're using one-way fabric designs, then you'll need to make sure that they're in opposite directions. So when you stitch them in the middle, your back and your front will be the right way round. So if they were stitched together, that would be the front, and you can see the pieces. Although this is an all over design, it did fool me at first, but actually when I looked at the pin cushions, I didn't really want the pin cushions to be upside down, so that's why I chose to have it this way round. So that would be the front, and if this was the seam line, I'd flip it over and this would be exactly the same. So I'm going to stitch those two pieces together using a 1/4 inch, and then we'll come back and go on to the next step. Once you've stitched your two pieces together, then you need to just press open your seams. So you can either use your fingers or an iron, or if you've got one of these handy seam rollers, which I absolutely love, you could just press it open with that. Then following the pattern, you're going to pop some markings onto the back of your front panel. So you've got 4 markings on each piece. This is going to enable you to stitch on the side pieces. So we're going to do that next. So we'll just flip that over. So taking one of your side pieces with your right sides together, you need to match your dots that you've put on both pieces of fabric, and you're going to, let me find a pin. I like to put a pin through mine so as I can see if they're lining up in the right place. So yes, that one is. So I'll do the other one, and then you're going to stitch from this top dot down to this one here along this side, and you're going to keep your needle in your fabric, lift up your foot, and then we're going to pivot this piece around. It's quite hard to show you without it being stitched, so I will stitch it and I will then come back and we'll have a proper look. But you're going to pivot it so as that this piece comes round. I'll show you once I've stitched this piece on. That's my first side piece stitched on. So the notch that you cut in the piece previously into the side piece should match up with the seam that's on the bottom. Unfortunately, I just stitched over mine a little bit, but that's okay. So that notch will should match up with this seam that you did earlier. And then we've got the notches matching up from the side piece to the main panel. And then when you come down to where the corners are, you just pop your needle into the fabric at this point. You pivot it round, the fabric round. So you're coming along this way, pop your needle down at that mark that you've put on your fabric, pivot it round, and then you're matching the edge of this to the edge of the fabric underneath. When you put your foot down, then that will flatten this part out. You carry on stitching your 1/4 inch, and then you do exactly the same at this point. Pop your needle down in that point, pivot it round and match this side of the side panel to the fabric that's underneath, and then just carry on stitching. So that's how that will look. Just push those corners out a little bit. That will be how that looks on the front. So that's one side of your pouch done. So I'm now going to do exactly the same and stitch the other side on as well. There we have the outer part of the pouch completed. So you've got your two side panels on, and that's it looking on the inside. So we're now going to move on to doing the lining. So you've just got two lining pieces, and what we'll need to do here is put right sides together, and we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch down this way along here, and then approximately 1.5 inches, 2 inches from either side. So starting from the outer towards the middle, because we're going to be leaving a gap for turning the pouch later on when we're finished. So I'll get that done, and then we'll move on to the next step. There we have the two pieces for the lining stitched together. So these two pieces are stitched, and then I've come in about 1.5 inches either side there. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to fold this back, so as we have got a piece flattened ready for when we're going to, oh excuse me, oh, a bit dry there I think. When we turn the pouch through later, this will all already be flattened down, ready for stitching it together. So I'm just going to just quickly flatten that out a bit, and then do the other side. We're now going to form the corners for the lining. So we're going to match up this seam and this seam and then stitch along. So it might actually be quite a good idea to press this seam open as well. I'm just going to do that with my fingers, and then matching the two pieces together. So you've got where the two stitching lines are there in the center and together. And I'm just going to put a couple of clips in there. So we're going to stitch this closed with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And do this side as well. Just press that open. I haven't trimmed my threads off there either. Never mind. Okay. And then I will clip that piece as well, and then we'll, as I say, we'll just stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance on either side. The seams you've just stitched, now trim down to approximately 1/8 inch. That's just to get some of the bulk out of the way. And then you have your lining constructed. So that's the lining, with the gap at the bottom for turning later on. So the next thing we're going to do is the pull tab. So take your piece of fabric that you have put aside for your pull tab and fold it in half, and just finger press or use your little gadget if you've got one. So fold it in half, and then each side you pop into the middle, so you've got another fold, and that side. It's quite fiddly when it's a tiny little bit of fabric. So we've done that, and then fold it again. So that's how it's going to look, and we're going to edge stitch all the way round. So that will then be your pull tab. You're then going to stitch this to the main body of your pouch. So if I had the pocket on the front, that would obviously be the front of the pouch, and you would need to stitch this onto the side that's on the left hand side. So you'll find the little notch that you had cut previously on these side pieces. Fold this piece in half and pop it on the top there with the notch in the center of your folded pull. I'm going to just pop a clip into there. Now you could sew that just with some big stitches to anchor it on the sewing machine. I'm actually going to sew it by hand, because I find that whenever I try and attach a very small piece like this with the machine, it just goes skew whiff. So I'm going to stitch it on by hand, and then we will be moving on to attaching the zip. The next step is to attach the zipper. So first of all, I'm going to do some measuring. So what you need to do is you'll need to measure from the first dot that's closest to where the pull tab is to the first seam. So you need to measure that approximately 1/4 inch down from the top of the fabric. So really it's almost running along where your fleece is. So we'll measure that, and then just make a note of your measurement. So in my case that's 4 inches, and then along this side it is 8 inches, and on this side it is 4 inches. So you'll need to measure both sides just to make sure that they are the same. And then what you'll need to do is you'll need to pop some markings on the back of your zipper tape. So I've already done mine. So starting from where the zip pull starts at the top, you will measure your measurements downwards. So the first one for me is 4, and then from that 4 inches I'm going to measure, I've measured 8, and then from that 8 inches I'm going to measure 4 inches. This will become apparent once we start attaching the zip to the pouch. So before we do that, we just need to do something with the ends of the zip. If you're using continuous zipper, then the instructions that Hazel has given will tell you how to do that. So I'm just going to pull mine down a little bit, and then because I've got this excess before the actual teeth of the zip start, I'm just going to fold that back on itself. And I'm just going to put a clip in there. You could glue it if you wanted to, or you could pin it. and do the same the other side. And then I'm just going to stitch just down here just to secure that. So I'll do that and then we'll be ready to pop the zip in. Now we've got our zip prepped, we are ready to pop it onto the top of your pouch. So undo the zipper, turn it over so you've got the back facing up, and you want your pouch with the little tab, the pull tab, to the left hand side. So taking your zipper and finding your first mark that you've marked on the back of your zipper, you're going to place that onto your first seam that's coming up from your little tab. So I'm going to put a clip just there, and then moving along, you can either use double-sided tape or clips or pins, however, or glue. It's entirely up to you how you pop it on. So I'm just going to use pins, and your next mark will be at your next seam. So we'll just carry on to there. And then you're going to come down this curve, and when you come to where the zipper pull is, just pop that in there, you need to turn your zip so it goes underneath, and where your, mine's very faint on here because it's practically the same colour as the zip, where your line is that you've marked on the back of your zip, you want to have your zip finishing where it's curved at that line, which I can just about see, which should in theory come to the point that's closest to the middle of, or where your notch is. I think mine's a little bit out, but that's okay. So I will just turn it like that, so it's the zip is going on the inside, and I will just pop another pin in there. And then you are going to carry on and do exactly the same, but going up the other way. So I'm going to finish doing that, and then we'll come back and have a look at it pinned on. When you've finished pinning or taping or sticking your zip on, this is what it will look like. So at one end where the tab is, you've got your two bits that you've folded back. We're going to stitch right across there, and then the other end you've got where the zip pull is, again we're going to stitch right across there. Now I'm going to stitch mine on first of all using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. This is so I can then put the lining on afterwards, so hopefully I'll get a neater finish. You could pop the lining on now and stitch the 3 layers together. That's entirely up to you, but I'm going to stitch my zip on first. So there we have our zip basted on. So there we go, all the way around. We're now going to put the lining in. So to do this, you want to take your lining piece, turn it inside out, and you're going to put your main bag inside the lining. So you'll need to squish it down a bit because the lining is slightly smaller than the actual pouch. This is so as it sits nicely inside the pouch once it's all finished. So just squish it in. You're going to be lining up all the corners and everything anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So starting off with the piece where your tab is, I'm going to put a clip just there. And then I'm going to carry on clipping all the way round. Now, hopefully your corners will match your corners of your lining will match the corners of your pouch. But don't worry if they don't, because I find when I'm sewing, it always works out in the end anyway. So I'm going to carry on clipping all the way round, and then we'll come back and have a look at that. So there we have the lining all clipped on. So wrong sides together. And don't forget to tuck in your zip end. So the loose end of your zip, you need to tuck that in before you attach the lining to the main body. So I'm now going to put my zipper foot onto my machine, and I'm going to sew the zipper on inside. So there's your lining and your zipper attached to your pouch. So we'll just do that up so you can see how it looks. So there we go. It's going to need a good press as well. So just open that up again. I'm going to press the lining away from the zipper tape with the iron and give the front a press as well, because then we're going to top stitch all the way around the top here. We'll also need to close the gap that we left in the lining. So you could either do this by hand or you could do it on the machine. I'm going to do mine on the machine. And then once we've done all of that, we'll come back and we'll attach the little tag that goes on the end of the zip. Okay, so we have top stitched around the top where the zip is, and we have enclosed the bottom seam in the lining. So we're now ready to add the final piece, which is the zip tab, which goes on the end of your zip, so it helps as another pull. Now I'm doing mine slightly different to how it says on the pattern. So I've cut a piece which is 2.5 inches by 1.5 inches. First of all, I'm going to just press in approximately 1/4 inch up on one of the longer sides, and then I'm going to stitch the two ends together using 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I will come back and show you how I'm going to finish that off. Before I do that, I'm just going to trim the ends of the zip because I don't actually need these little bits here. So I'll just trim those up to where the coil is. If you're using meterage zipping, then you won't need to do that because you'll already have a cut end. Okay, so I'm going to go and sew this little piece, and then we'll come back and see how it's going to fit on the end. Okay, that's that little piece sewn. So we're now just going to flatten out the seam allowance, and we're going to have it flat on the back, so as it's in the middle of the back of the piece. So we'll do that. And then this is going to fit on the end of your zip. So just slide it onto the end of your zip and push it down until this raw edge meets the end of your zipper. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch along here and then turn this through so you're back onto the right side, and then I'm going to top stitch this piece down. So I'll get that done and we'll have a look and see how it looks. When I got to the sewing machine, I'd realised that the seam was actually on the top of the zip, so I just moved it around before I stitched it. So I've stitched that on. You could top stitch it all the way around if you want to, but I've just left mine like that. So there we go. That is your pouch finished. It's a really great size. It would be great as a wash bag, project bag, something you could take if you're going to sewing classes, because I think you'd fit all of your sewing bits and pieces in that. So it's an easy make as well. So that's that one without the pocket. I have made one previously which does have the pocket on it. So that's the pocket for that one. And inside this one I actually put some waterproof fabric, so this would make a really nice wash bag for someone as well. So there we go, that's the wide mouth zipper pouch.